Performing their program, Upright, WGI School of the Arts is proud to present William R. Boone High School.
When we look at locomotion for the hominins, we're looking at a shift from quadrupedalism or suspensory locomotion to bipedalism. So there's 5 different parts of the body that we look at. We look at the skull, particularly the position of the foramen magnum. We look at the vertebral column and how many curves are present and what the shape of that vertebral column is. We look at the pelvis, the positioning of the ilium specifically. We look at the femur and the positioning of the knee. And then we look at the foot, and there's several different changes in the foot. The main thing that we're looking at is the position of the foramen magnum. So the important thing to remember is that the face needs to be facing forward. So the human here is in anatomical position, her eyes are facing forward, but the orangutan here is actually looking slightly up. So in order to see the actual body position, you need to rock that jaw forward onto the table so that the teeth are parallel to the ground. So here, when I put this in anatomical position, you can actually see the foramen magnum through the back. Right? And if I flip it over and you look at it from the top, you can see that there's a long distance from the back of the bone to that foramen magnum, and that's a long distance. And it's more towards the back and angled upward onto that back of the occipital bone. In the human, as you can see, there's a much shorter distance from the back of the bone to that foramen magnum. And the occipital bone completely comes around the back, so that that foramen magnum is directly underneath the skull. So that's the skull. When you look at the vertebral column of a quadruped or a suspensory animal like this chimp here, what we can see is that there's a small curve in the neck region. So over here in our lumbar or cervical region, we have a bit of a curvature, allowing the head to be vertical. But in the lumbar region, which is where we would expect to see a curvature over here, in our bipeds, we don't see that. So a straight line from the rib cage to the pelvis. That means when this guy stands up and he stands on his back feet, his head, his rib cage is going to be in front of those back feet. It's going to be angled forward. Whereas in a biped, we would expect to see a curvature in that low back that would curve anteriorly towards the front of the body, allowing the shoulders to balance above that pelvis, giving us more of a vertical body posture. When we look at the pelvis, one of the main things that we see here is that this ilium, it's very flat and it's towards the back of the body. So if we move up to the articulated individual, you can see here how the back of the pelvis is very flat on the back of the body, and then the pubis just wraps around at the bottom. It's very tall, it's very long, it's very thin. If I move back over here to a human pelvis, it's much more rounded, it's much more open, and that ilium isn't on the back, but instead it curves around the sides. And you can feel those iliac crests when you put your hands on your hips. That changes the orientation, the shape of the pelvis, giving more of a stable base to the body, and therefore allowing the upper body bigger area for that upper body weight to be supported by. In terms of the femurs here, you can see that there's obviously a size difference in the femurs between the chimpanzee and the human, but that's actually not the most important part here. What's the most important part, if you look straight down on it, is the condyles. So here in that shape, the two condyles are equal in size, making a flat surface. Whereas in the human, if we look at the condyles, you can see that the medial condyle is larger, causing this to have an angle. So when the two bones are next to each other, you can see here, if we change our angle slightly, the cord comes straight up and down. It's a completely vertical angle. However, if I do the same with the human, notice how it angles out. What this does then is brings the knees together. So in our chin, those knees are going to come straight down, whereas in our biped, they're going to angle together, bringing the feet together. This changes the positioning of the center of gravity so that the center of gravity is right next to each other. This is really important for balancing while walking ideally. When looking at differences in feet, we look at 3 major changes. One of them you can see here that we see in the non-bipeds versus the big toe being in line with the rest of the toes, which we see in bipeds here. Second thing is the length of those toes themselves. So if we look at this non-biped here, you can see that the toes are very long. We compare that to our biped. Here you can see that the toes themselves are very short, but you can see how big of a difference that is in size. Now the last one is a little bit trickier. So here with the non-biped, you can see the single arch. Arches from the back of the foot to the front of the foot. We call that the transverse arch, and that's what allows the foot to grasp. In a biped, we still have that arch, that front to back arch, but we also have an arch that arches the foot side to side. That creates what we call a longitudinal arch to the foot, and that gives the foot shock absorption capabilities as the individual is walking in a heel strike, push off from the toe type motion.
Boone High School from the National